All right, this video is about the basics of what economics is about. First thing we need to do is to define what economics is. Economics is really the study of how individuals and societies use their scarce resources to obtain goods and services. So it really is looking at why people do the things that they do. This decision-making process that people use based on the fact that they have to make choices because we don't have enough resources for everyone to have everything that they want. There are two schools of economics. One is macroeconomics, and that's got the world there. So they look at economics in terms of how a government would make decisions, or how the world will make decisions. And there are large issues that affect everyone, whether it's inflation or recession, looking at unemployment, looking at aggregate supply and aggregate demand, which is the overall supply and demand of all goods and services in a particular country. Microeconomics, if you use it and equate it with like a microscope takes something and looks at very small parts of it. So microeconomics is not looking at the economy as a whole, but it's breaking it down into smaller segments, and we're just going to look at it on individual decision making. How does an individual make supply and demand decisions or choices based on the fact that they can't have everything they want and need? Or a business. We're looking at one individual business or one individual sector of an economy. So how do these businesses make supply and demand decisions, knowing that there aren't enough resources for them to produce everything that they want or need to? So macro is the whole entire picture. It's looking at an economy as a whole for that whole entire country, versus micro, where we're just taking a small section of the economy, whether it's individuals or businesses, and studying it. We need to look at this idea of scarcity. Scarcity is the basic economic problem that everyone faces. We face it at the macro level, so every country faces scarcity. We face it at the business level, businesses face scarcity, and we face it at an individual level, so all individuals have to deal with this idea of scarcity. And what scarcity is the idea that you have limited resources, whether it's natural resources, labor, or human resources, whether it's machines and tools and buildings. Those are all limited. But on the other hand, we have unlimited wants and needs. So once we fulfill all the things that we think we want and need, there's always a list behind that. So because we have limited resources and we have unlimited wants and needs, scarcity requires everyone to make a choice. So you have to choose because you can't have everything. So knowing that we have to make these choices, how do we ration the goods and services? And eventually we'll look at different types of economic systems that determine how we are going to distribute or ration goods and services. Here in the United States, we put a price tag on things, all right? And we can determine the relative scarcity of things based on the price of something. The diamond with the sapphire is going to be very expensive relative to a paper clip. And why is that? Because paper clips are far less scarce. It doesn't require the type of resources. It's not as difficult to come by as it is to have diamonds and sapphires. So the more expensive something tends to be, the more scarce it is. The less expensive, the less scarce it tends to be. When making these choices, going back to this idea that we have scarcity, which requires us to make choices, when you're making a choice, people tend to look out for their own self-interest. And we assume in economics that you are a rational decision maker, and the two things that you are going to look at in making a decision is the cost to you and the benefit to you. And so people do things up until the point where it doesn't make sense cost-wise. Your benefit has to outweigh your cost, or you're not going to do something. And what I need for you to understand is this is relative and it may differ from person to person. So even the same decision that's being made, people can make different decisions because their costs and their benefits look different to them. So just a little review, make sure you understand that economics really is deciding how we are going to meet the needs that we want based on the fact that we don't have enough resources. So that idea of scarcity. Scarcity is going to require us to make choices. And the choices that we make usually are self-interested. We are rational decision makers. So we weigh the cost and the benefit, and we do those things that have a greater benefit than cost.